for the logistics dance. Wow, how about Thea and Chuck? Boy, weren't they amazing? What a gift. Woo! In one voice, you are amazing accompanying us. It just pulls things together. It's a real blessing what Paul's here. Well, today, folks, we are here to welcome back again Reverend Sally Robbins. Sally, yes, big time for her. Sally started her ministry about 25 years ago and has, after following some particular ventures in the world of advertising, entrepreneurship, she moved into and has a gift for sharing and teach of this teaching. So she has been doing that regularly and now lives in Charlotte. So she drives 2 hours up here to be with us. That in itself is a gift. And I know, and those of you that travel I-26 sometimes know it's a gift. So I would like to share that Sally's talk this morning is going to be on, do you have separation anxiety? So just think about that a minute, and I'm sure she'll help guide you through that. And for those of you that have not read in the April Science of Mind magazine, Reverend Sally did the affirmations and the lessons for every day for the 30 days. So get one of these and keep her with you all the time because her message is absolutely amazing. Please welcome the Reverend Sally.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Tim. I just want to drink in your loveliness. It is so good to be back here. I just absolutely adore this center. It is well worth the 2-hour drive. And just to be back in this vibration is a real gift to me. I want to start this morning by first acknowledging that many of us woke up to the news that John McCain had passed. And I have to say that having just moved here 4 months ago from Phoenix, where he, of course, was a senator and a House of Representatives representative for many years, he's a beloved person there. But I know he's beloved across this land because as I was watching the news, the 2 words that kept coming up in describing him were courage and service. And it doesn't get much better than that. Because whether you're on the spiritual path, and of course we're all on the spiritual path, right? In one way or the other, he chose to make his life as one of service. And it doesn't matter what particular party you might be a part of, what your political leanings might be. I know in Arizona, there was an agreement that here was a man who really tried to do the best thing for this country. So I acknowledge him this morning and his family as he has made his transition onto his next great plane and adventure of life. But this morning, my talk that I've prepared for you is, do you have separation anxiety? Now, when you think of that phrase, separation anxiety, most of you probably think of something like this. The first day of school, where the child is saying, no, I don't want to go. And I love the comparison, the first day of college, when the parent is going, no. Can anyone here relate to that? Just a few of you. And so we know that that is where a child, or the parent, or whatever the situation might be, is having some sort of anxiety about being removed from a very safe and comfortable place. A place of shelter, a place of security. But what I want to address this morning is separation anxiety in a different way. Let me share a story. I'm going to get personal with you today. Is that all right? Yeah. So, 3.5 weeks ago, I flew up to the Baltimore, Washington area, and we had a company meeting. I worked remotely in Charlotte from my home for a company that was based in Maryland. And so we were all called together for this meeting. And at the meeting, the owner of the company stood up and he said, "I've sold the company." There was a ripple of, "Oh my gosh," that went through all of us. And then he said, "Don't worry. The company that I have negotiated the purchase with has ensured," because that was one of the things I wanted assurance of, was that everybody kept their jobs. So everyone will keep their jobs, and your salary will not be changed. And you could hear the sigh of relief going through the room. And so then the new owner of the company came in, and he said the same thing. "You all have jobs. Don't worry about your salary. I have great respect for all of you. This is going to be a wonderful thing." 2 weeks ago, I get a phone call from the new owner. Can you see where this is going? I get a call from the new owner, and he says, "Sally, I'm really, really sorry to make this phone call, but I can't bring you into the new company." And I was like, "What?" I was a little shocked. And he said, "I'm sorry, I can't." And I asked him if I was the only one. He said no. There were others that also we were laid off. And so as I hung up the phone, my world was a little rocked. And I knew that even though we had been promised this, and I felt like that had been handled very poorly, that doesn't matter at the end of the day, because I knew that my pay was coming to a close. And so, like a good religious scientist, fear came up. Immediately. Oh my God, what am I going to do? Am I the only one that's ever happened to? Okay. And so I could feel that, when you just feel it coming up into your throat, and you're like, "Oh, what is this?" And this is the separation anxiety that I'm talking about. Because what it really came down to after I got over that initial fear was like, "Oh, I forgot who I am. I forgot that I am one with an unlimited source, and that company is not my employer. God is my employer." And so I had to get back to the basics, right? Emmett Fox always said, if you want more love in life, get back to the basics. If you want more prosperity, get back to the basics. If you want greater health, get back to the basics. And here was a chance for me to do just that. To lose the separation anxiety that I was feeling, the hurt, the disappointment, the anger, all of that coming up, and I had to allow that to come up and feel it and then go, "That is not who I am. There is something within me that is greater." And if I'm really, really honest with myself, I was ready to leave that job. I was ready to leave that job. And Spirit simply gave me what I call the golden boot. Boop. Time for another adventure, Sally. And so what really bothered me was I didn't get to control it. I didn't go out on my terms. And so once I got through that, I recognized, wait a minute, this could be the greatest gift ever. This could be the greatest experience of my life if I choose to see it for what it really is, the opportunity to expand and to get really clear on what I'm here to do. Now, I was doing marketing and sales for that company. That is not what I'm really here to do. My gift is to communicate empowering ideas through the spoken and written word. And now, all of a sudden, I have some spare time to do just that. And if I have to take a job to pay the bills while I continue to grow that ministry, then that's great. But here's the bottom line. My separation anxiety was really all about me forgetting that my source is always always lavishly supporting me. And I do forget that every now and then, because I don't know about you, but I grew up in a house where the ethic was, you work hard for your money. Anyone else? You work hard. And so I didn't know that it could be easy. And so that is my declaration at this moment. That I know that as I move forward, I've gotten very clear in the past 2 weeks, very clear about what I'm here to do. And I've gotten inspiration as to how to move forward. And I'm really just letting it go. I know everything is going to support me beautifully. And the question I keep asking myself is, are you ready to be outrageously supported? Are you ready to be outrageously supported? Think about that for a second. Because at first I go, well, of course, absolutely. But then there's something deeper that is coming up for healing in this experience for me. It might be for you too, where you're saying, wait a minute, I really don't have everything in my life as I'd like it to be. What is a belief that is holding me back from moving into that place of oneness with my source, where I have radiant health, loving relationships, all the things that we teach here? So my separation anxiety grew to that place of deep knowing. Because isn't that what we're here for anyway? Life is always feeding back to us exactly what we need to know. And I know that my soul brings to me everything that I absolutely need to learn in this life. Do you agree with that? A few of you do. Do you agree with that? Yes. Okay. Because when we are open and available to our good, when we are open and available to that which is always flowing to us and through us, and I am a prosperous channel, just as you are. I need to be available, though, to receive that good without being stuck in fear. Does that make sense? So the separation anxiety that I had experienced, and I'll be honest, there are moments when it comes up, and I just get to go, it's all right. I am one with my source. I am one with my source. It reminds me something that I have shared in the foundations class, the 4 stages of spiritual growth. I'm sure you're all very familiar with this. Michael Beckwith at Agape, he was the first person that I heard teaching it. And you start in stage 1, where life happens to you. You are in victimhood, right? Everything happens to you. There's lots of blame to go around. And then we realize, oh my gosh, I can now move to the to-it stage. By me, life happens by me. And that's really where new thought starts. That's actually the self-improvement realm of the world. And unfortunately, I know new thought folks that get stuck in stage 2. They are great manifestors, but they don't move into that 3rd stage in the bottom right, where life happens through me. I am simply the vessel for good now. I am the vessel for opportunity, for prosperity, for joy, for all the wonderful God qualities. And then finally, we move to stage 4, where we are truly one. It's life as me, God as me. And so I simply fell back to stage 1 for a second, as many of us can do, because the truth is we're fluid around this, right? There are moments when we're in stage 4, we are rock solid. And then something can change in our world, we can tumble back down. That's the dance of life right there. And these 4 stages of spiritual growth, we simply get better and better and better at staying and living in those stages. Not just talking about it. We are religious scientists. We get to practice this stuff. Darn it. Because there's lots of people who can spout really wonderful words, right? When push comes to shove, when the rubber meets the road, we then get to practice this. And I'm practicing just as you are. One of my first teachers said, you must be your own laboratory. You've got to be your own laboratory. Because how can I really know this move from the intellectual down to the real knowing. We call it the 18-inch journey, unless I'm experiencing it, I'm doing it. I can know I am one. Can I really practice this? Practice the faith that comes up from that. Ernest Holmes had this to say. He says, the whole purpose of the science of mind is to reconcile the apparent separation of the spiritual world, which must be perfect, with the material world, which appears imperfect. This is why we are taught to be transformed by the renewing of our minds. That wonderful scripture from Romans. Be ye transformed by the renewing of your minds. I need a little transforming on that day I got, because my mind went back to stage one. I had to lift myself back up into, and of course I called my practitioner. I need a little help. That's when we get to know with someone else the truth of our divinity, the truth of who we are, the truth of how we get to operate in this world, even when appearances are telling us something differently. So you and I have the opportunity to recognize that the world is our playground, and we will always be home. We'll always be home. You know, there's times when I've had separation anxiety where I didn't even feel like I belonged here. Can anybody relate to that? It's like, oh, what am I doing here? Because it just seemed like such a struggle sometimes. And now I know that people actually will say to me, well, where's your home? Meaning, where did you grow up? And my answer has always been, because I grew up on Navy bases around the world, my answer has always been, wherever I lay my head, that's my home. And I didn't realize how much I was really saying that to myself, in addition to others. Because my home is who I am. My home is always here. My home is always that which I am. And so the separation anxiety that I feel from moment to moment sometimes can pull me away from that feeling. But what it really is telling me is, let's amp up the vibration. Let's remember who we are. That's what we're here to do. Have you ever heard of the autobiography in 5 short chapters? One of my favorite things. It is truly the short chapters. It goes like this. Chapter 1. I walk down the street. There is a deep hole in the sidewalk. I fall in. I am lost. I am hopeless. It isn't my fault. It takes forever to find a way out. Now, what stage would this person be in? Stage 1, victimhood. But then we go to chapter 2. Chapter 2, I walk down the same street. There is a deep hole in the sidewalk. I pretend I don't see it. I fall in again. I can't believe I'm in the same place, but it isn't my fault. It still takes a long time to get out. Now, they're inching towards stage 2, but they're still seeing the victimhood there. Chapter 3, I walk down the same street. There is a deep hole in the sidewalk. I see it there. I still fall in. It's a habit, but my eyes are open. I know where I am. It is my fault. I get out immediately. Chapter 4, I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I walk around it. We've got some learning going on here. And chapter 5, I walk down another street. Can you relate to this as your life? I know I can. That is my autobiography right there. I keep choosing a different street. When I get to that place where I know the truth of my being, the oneness that I really am, I get to choose another street. I don't stay in the victimhood anymore. And that's the beauty of this teaching, is we get to understand at the very core of our being that we are here to know without a shadow of a doubt, with a faith that cannot be broken, that we are divinity. We are divine beings. The world will tell you many things other than that, won't it? And then this is why we get to come here on Sundays and remember. This is why we get to call our practitioners. when we have those moments of doubt. They will lift us up to that place, that vibration again that says, you get to choose a different street. Now, I lost a job with the company that I've been with for 2.5 years. I get to choose a new company. Isn't that wonderful? That's great news. And so when I look at it from that perspective, I get to choose a new company that gives me still the flexibility to do my writing and my speaking and my teaching, all the things that really matter to me. And as I publish my book and become a best-selling author, where I'm totally financially free, then I get to let go of that. So we all get to make the determination as to how we're showing up in this world. I want to tell you about another wonderful person who has demonstrated to me again and again how she has handled separation anxiety. This is Reverend Karen Weingard. She's based in Southern California. She is an amazing woman. She had a church for a while. But I met her. If you're wondering, wow, she's dressed kind of sparkly. This is how she is. This is who Reverend Karen is. And I met her through the annual conference that we always had at Asilomar for many, many years. Reverend Karen was the co-chair in 2013, and I had been invited to be a speaker at that conference. And Reverend Karen was the one who introduced me. And as I watched her on the podium, I'm standing in the wings of the stage of Merrill Hall. I see her up at the podium. She has on a pink, bright pink, hot pink miniskirt and a velvet coat and hot pink go-go boots. She has it going on. And she pulls it off beautifully. And that's Reverend Karen. But I actually found her story beyond the appearance of who she is. She sat down one day with me and told me her story. At the age of 3, she was diagnosed with polio. She was told that she would never walk, but her parents refused to believe that prognosis. So they got her doctors. They actually moved her to Warm Springs, Georgia, where Franklin Delano Roosevelt had been treated. She was treated by some of the best doctors, and finally at age 13, 10 years later, she was finally able to walk. It took a long time. But she was not going to settle for that prognosis either. Well, when she got married, had some kids, divorced, she was in the LA area, and she met and fell in love with someone that you might recognize, Norman Fell, who is Mr. Roper on Three's Company, and then they had a spinoff of his own show. So she married Norman Fell in 1975. And her children from the previous marriage were grown up, had moved away. But she and Norman wanted a child. She was past the age where she could conceive physically. They tried. So they decided to adopt. So they had a prayer. She and Norman had a prayer. Please, God, let us have a child who touches lives. Let us have a child who touches lives. That was their continual affirmation. So the child, a boy that they named Casey, was delivered to them. He was born in Kansas. They flew him out to Los Angeles. They were overjoyed. Norman and Karen took him home. But they discovered very quickly that Casey had severe developmental issues. He had cerebral palsy. He had severe seizures. He didn't walk. He didn't talk. And he eventually needed a breathing apparatus at all times. Norman said to Karen, I think you should give him back. But Karen wouldn't accept that separation anxiety that she knew was coming up in Norman and in her as well. And she said, I'm not giving him back. He's my son. And if I give my son back, how do you know that I wouldn't do that same thing to you? I'd walk out on you someday. So they kept Casey. And she said, this is what she said to me. You say yes to your answered prayer, no matter what it looks like. Isn't that great? You say yes to your answered prayer, no matter what it looks like. She was told by her son's doctors to stimulate him as much as possible, so she did Indian dances around the crib. She cooked macrobiotic food for him, and because he couldn't speak, she said they communicated through their eyes. And she said he was just such an expressive child with his eyes. He's pure spirit when you look into his eyes, she told me. Neither her family nor her friends embraced Casey, nor did Norman. And Karen realized that this was her and Casey's path to walk together. On one Mother's Day, Karen's mother called her and said that we want to go to the club for a Mother's Day brunch. And she said to Karen, your father and I don't want Casey at the club. It'll be too distracting. And Karen understood in that moment that her mother was the one who was disabled. And she said, thank you, but I'm going to pass. Casey and I will celebrate on our own. Thank you for the invitation, but I'll celebrate Mother's Day with you at some other time. So, at that time, she was a pastor of a church, and so she took her son in his wheelchair, put him up on stage, and she invited everyone in the congregation to come up and to look at him in his eyes. Just deeply look into him through his eyes. She said there wasn't a dry eye in the house. People were so moved. And when Casey was 12, he had, again, severe seizures that hospitalized him. And the doctor said to her, look, you need to prepare. This is it. He's not going to live past 12. So Karen decided in that moment, she said, my son will die in God's time, not the doctor's time. Again, she did not allow the separation anxiety that was coming up, the fear that was coming up, to displace that feeling of oneness, that this was a child who was making an impact, and she didn't have to buy into someone else's ideas. So she placed him in, they took off the apparatus, and he turned blue because they wasn't breathing for him anymore, and then he started to breathe. So he recovered and was fine after that. But it was having a toll on her marriage. And so she said that Norman actually said to her, it's either him or it's me. And so you know, of course, what Karen's decision was at that point. She decided that her marriage with Norman must come to an end, which greatly saddened her. And she said that she never stopped loving Norman, and when he was diagnosed with cancer in 1998, she was there for him. She took care of him, and he died in her arms. This is someone who has said, I'm standing for love, no matter what. She knows who she is. And she knows that as she works with everyone in the world around her, that she gets to stand for love. So, because of her flamboyant style of wearing glitter, she puts glitter all over herself, feather boas, she is always dressed up to the max, that people will frequently come up to her and say, are you going to a party? And she will always reply back to them, I am the party. And so she wrote a book called I Am the Party. And she decided that that was how she was going to celebrate her life in this world. That she was here to be an instrument of love, of unification, standing for the things that sometimes were very difficult to do. She says, I call Casey uniquely abled. Casey is my most profound teacher of unconditional love because he can't earn any of the badges. He can't hit a home run. He can't, go to Boy Scout meetings. But he is uniquely able to bring love into full presence with whoever he is with. When I talked with her about this just a couple years ago, they had just celebrated his 27th birthday. He's now living in an assisted living facility because she can't lift him, but she still is right there for him each and every day. That's Reverend Karen. She says, love deeply, surrender everything to God, trust that all is unfolding exactly as it should. And that's where the separation anxiety, we get to go, wait a minute, there's something beyond this. There's something here that I haven't quite seen yet. And she was able to see beyond the very limited notion of who her son was, that the doctors told her, that her husband told her, and she refused to accept that he was anything but a pure divine spirit. This is one of the most profound lessons another minister has taught me. I know that she has been an inspiration to many, many people. And so my being laid off is yet another example for me to inspire, again, that's being in God. I get to be in God again and again and again. And I get to practice, and I get to practice it some more, and then I get to practice it until I really know it. Because guess what? The fact that it's coming up means that I get to really know this time around. And so you and I have the capability within us to deeply understand that what we are here to do is all about the oneness. Are we really practicing oneness? This is a lifetime mission, ladies and gentlemen. It's our lifetime mission to understand what oneness really is all about. That there's not people in this room, or however many people there are. How many are there? Just one. And so I get to practice that again and again. I'm going to close with a wonderful quote by Dr. Seuss, one of my favorites. He says, "You're off to great places. Today is your day. Your mountain is waiting. So get on your way." Are you ready? Yeah. We're going to get on our way. We're going to practice what we really preach here. And we don't really preach, do we? We're simply uncovering that which already is there. So let's go within. Let's move to that place that absolutely knows our oneness, our divinity with Spirit. That knows that there is nothing blocking whatever outward appearances there might be. I know that each and every person in this room, I claim for them right now, that they are vessels and avenues of prosperity. That prosperity is flowing to and through them right now. I claim for them the divine health that is already theirs. I claim for them the loving relationships, which for so long some may have sought, and yet it's always been right there. So I know and recognize that each one of us is coming to full expression right now of the God selves that we are. I bless our time together this morning. I know that there has been something that has been lifted up in this room and that each one of us has said yes to a greater idea coming through us right now. I bless each and every person here, lifting their consciousness, expanding their consciousness, and being a part of the one. There are no accidents. Everyone is here by divine right appointment. I let it be so. And together we say, and so it is. Namaste.
Just take that in a moment. Remember who we are, no matter what it looks like. So as our welcomers come forward, I want to welcome anybody who's here for the first time by raising your hand, if you wouldn't mind. Anybody here for the first time today? Hi, good morning, welcome. I'm glad you joined us this morning. Our welcomers have a card for you, and it's a way to stay connected with the community if you just fill it out. They also have a gift for you out in the Welcome Center after the celebration. So welcome to each and every one of us, and we're so glad these newest faces could join us this morning. Yeah, thank you. Now we'll have our prosperity acceptors come forward. Go ahead and take out what you're going to give. Love on it. Be mindful of the power you have in this moment to manifest. And just realize the energy that you're giving here this morning, this cash, this check, this credit card, whatever it is way beyond that. It is way beyond this idea of putting something in a basket. It is God, it is Spirit. It is the power, it is the presence, it is the prosperity, it is the flow of life that gets created in this opportunity to give. So as you're in this moment, the sacred moment of giving, keep that in mind this morning as we go ahead and repeat our investment affirmation aloud together. I freely and joyously give from the abundance and fullness of my overflowing wealth, knowing my gift goes with love as it touches and blesses the world. And so it is.